PanTech Chronicles, Book 1, Shadowfalcon, written by F. Lockhaven and M. A. Owens. Chapter 9. The 5 soldiers kept their rifles pointed directly at me, saying nothing and making no movement, indicating that they'd heard me in the first place. I took a deep breath.
"Hello, I'd like to see Linus, please,"
I shouted much louder than the last time. Surely they'd heard me the first time. After a few moments longer, one lowered his rifle and looked to the others.
Wow, did she say Linus?
Another shrugged.
Leave it to that idiot to tell the first pretty face he sees where the camp's located.
A third soldier spoke.
It's not like it's hidden. We've had 2 citizens stumble in here by accident already. It's not like we're on a management mission.
He was promptly elbowed. I suppose I wasn't supposed to hear about management missions. It wasn't as if I knew what they were, but I could venture a few guesses. The first to lower his rifle looked up at me.
Stay right there. One more step, and we'll shoot. Understand?
I clenched my teeth. What was I supposed to do? Run in there and knife everyone before they could turn me into a red mist with their rifles?
"Yeah, okay, I'll just sit here."
I sat on the sand. Maybe that would be less threatening. After a moment, another soldier walked up to them, looked out to me, and removed his helmet. Thankfully, it was Linus, hopefully here to tell them I wasn't a threat to 5 armed PanTech super soldiers. He squinted and held his hand above his brow to shield his eyes from the sun.
Taylor? Is that you?
"You remembered me!"
I shouted, pretending to be surprised, except part of me genuinely was surprised.
You remembered me.
His smile reached his eyes. He stepped forward, then turned back to the other soldiers.
Tell the commander I'm taking some of my downtime outside the camp.
I wished they didn't have those helmets on. It was impossible to read their expressions, or even be sure they were human. Sometimes I wondered anyway, with or without the helmet. The soldiers didn't answer, just turned and walked back into the camp as Linus strolled out to meet me, holding his helmet to his side, his rifle slung across his back.
I was just starting to get used to the idea that I'd probably never see you again, but I'm glad I was wrong. I haven't been able to get you out of my mind since I saw you yesterday,
He said, far more candidly than I expected. Just as I felt my cheeks flush with heat, it was countered by a low ache in my heart. Please don't be the man you seem to be, said my heart, at the thought of hurting him if it were true. But that would be ideal for the plan, said my brain, ever so slightly louder.
"I've thought about you a lot, too.
Come on, Taylor.
Will you have lunch with me? It would have been breakfast, but I got a little lost."
Sure, I'd love to. Truth be told, until I'm called for a mission, I've got all kinds of time. I save it up and cash it out, usually because I don't get along so well with the other soldiers.
He stopped a moment, looking away and scratching his chin.
Sorry, wrong way to say it. I get along with them fine. We're just not good friends. We don't spend time together off the clock.
His face began to turn red.
I'm talking too much.
He finally said, with a big sigh. I giggled involuntarily. I hated that I seemed to do that with him before I could realize it and stop myself.
"It's all right. I probably know less about your world than you do about mine, so I enjoy hearing it, really. But let's talk over lunch. There's a couple of big rocks a little ways from here that make some shade this time of day. Hope you like salt-cured ham."
He didn't answer. Not with words anyway. His smile said enough as it got just a little bit brighter. We walked away from the camp and finally arrived at the rocks. I spread out a blanket on the sand and sat, pulling items out of the sacks my mother had given me.
Wow, you made all of this?
"I wish,"
I said with a weak laugh.
"My mother made these."
Should have lied, Taylor. His expression darkened.
That's one of those things a lot of people miss when they leave. You'll never see or hear from your parents again. My old man wasn't a good man. Got killed when I was just a boy over a game of cards. My mom was the only person I ever met that was meaner than he was. She was pretty sick when I left, guessing she's dead by now.
I stared at him blankly for a moment, trying to think of something comforting to say. but all I could manage to do was frown awkwardly for an uncomfortably long time.
Sorry to hear that. I'm guessing that made you a good candidate for PanTech, though, with all your troubles?
Wow. Couldn't have said something more stupid than that if you tried. He laughed at that.
Sure, I suppose. I was pretty good with guns, too. Joined up with a posse and caused a lot of trouble. Mostly robbed, got into the occasional gunfight, earned myself the nickname Blue-Eyed Devil after one real nasty incident.
Strange. The more he talked about this, the more his speaking and accent seemed to change.
Your voice.
I said.
You sound a little different.
He scratched the back of his head.
Oh, right, sorry. Seems that's one of my bigger problems. Despite being a pretty smart guy, I never seem to learn. When you arrive, they work to assimilate you into PanTech culture. You'll learn how you should be dressing and speaking, how to hide your accent, and things like that.
With a smile, I handed him a slice of ham and bread. I was starting to understand why he found himself at odds with authority.
I bet you haven't tried cactus wine before.
He grinned.
You'd be right. Pour the cupful if you don't mind. We're not allowed to have alcohol in the camp.
I did as he asked and handed it over to him. He took a big drink, then another, and another, until the cup was completely empty. He passed it back to me with an even bigger grin than before.
Thank you, Taylor. That really hit the spot.
He bit into his ham, never taking his eyes off me as he chewed. We ate silently for a few minutes without speaking, and he finally let his smile rest. Not for long, though. He grinned, looking me in the eyes.
Let the two of us be frank with one another.
He said.
About what? You want to hear about my life in the village?
I asked, hoping that's what he meant. It wasn't,
I think you know what I mean.
he said, taking another bite of his ham. I did know what he meant, but I wasn't about to blow my cover just yet, no matter how poorly thought out and lousy it was.
Sure. I'm not a big fan of the cactus wine.
He tried not to laugh because his mouth was full now, but he failed, and part of it escaped his mouth before he threw his hand up to his face to stop it.
What do you do for a living?
He quickly asked, his embarrassment, over losing part of his food in front of me, taking his confident talk down a notch.
I'm a veterinarian.
He raised his eyebrow and let out a whistle.
You don't say.
He looked around.
Camels and livestock, I reckon.
You what? Reckon?
He rubbed his chin.
Sorry, I mean to say, do you take care of the livestock around here? This is my first time here, but I saw pigs and camels.
I do. And pets, of course.
Pets?
He looked at me as though he didn't believe what I was saying.
Right, sorry. Some people keep lizards. We have mice out here and, of course, snakes.
He flinched a bit at the mention of snakes, and I didn't miss it.
What about you? Do you have any pets?
No, I don't. I think I want something a little different, but nothing's ever really connected with me. Besides, I see plenty of other people's pets.
He nodded.
I had a horse once before I left for PanTech. Had a dog when I was younger, but my pop shot him after he bit him. Was a good dog.
He seemed more distant all of a sudden, as if the memory was dragging him back in.
What's a dog?
He grinned.
You should try to pass your test and become an employee. You'll discover all kinds of new things. A lot more than dogs, assuming you think that life can be for you.
Is it for you?
I asked, genuinely curious.
No, I thought it would be. I thought I'd get there, and everything would be perfect. Finally, no more robbing or shooting people who didn't deserve to be shot, but it's the same thing, just with bigger guns and a bigger gang.
They'll kill you if they hear you say that.
I said coldly.
Nah, it's not that bad. I've said worse.
He admitted.
Now about this plan of yours?
Ah, I'd expected him to be duller than this, but it seems I just caught him in an awkward moment yesterday. He still seemed to really like me, though, so maybe...
I need you to vouch for me to use the village's rifle.
He frowned, then sighed, but returned to his smile almost as quickly, as though he knew the answer before he'd asked.
What do you need the rifle for? A lady like you shouldn't be doing the kind of dangerous things I'm betting you're about to do. You should let a man handle it.
I'm not a lady like apparently where you're from, and I can handle myself fine, thank you.
I threw the contents of my glass of wine into his face and leaned forward, snatching up the blanket and stuffing it back into my pack.
I'll find another way.
I started to turn away, but I felt his hand grab my arm, firmly, but much more gently than yesterday. I whipped around and socked him in the jaw, sending him stumbling back a step, which probably surprised me more than it did him. He released my arm.
Okay, I get it. I was wrong, and that was a stupid thing to say. Forgive me?
He rubbed his jaw.
Oh, and nice punch. You as good with that rifle as you are with your fist?
Better.
I said, still feeling a wave of anger. Directed at the wrong person, as usual. I was lucky he didn't slap my head off with his super armor hand. Instead, he was already smiling again. It was almost intoxicating, the way he answered everything with a smile.
In that case, I'll do it on one condition.
You want a kiss?
His face contorted.
What? No, I mean, do you want to?
He slapped himself in the forehead and pulled his hand slowly down his face.
Sorry, I mean,
He took a deep breath and exhaled, his face turning red.
that was a joke. You made a joke. Sorry.
I smiled. Suddenly, I wanted to tell him it wasn't a joke, in a way I hadn't expected I would, but I had to hide that, for now, at least.
Just that you seem like a lot of fun, and I'm owed the downtime to do whatever I want with. It beats playing cards with a bunch of boring yes sirs and no sirs. I want to join you to hunt the snake.
But I never said.
I started, but he cut me off.
You didn't have to say. I never liked the idea of bringing that thing here in the first place, and I had a feeling that's what this was all about. Don't look at it as help. Look at it as doing me a favor in exchange. An equal trade between gunslingers. Deal?
He held out his hand. I looked down at it a moment. I must be completely insane, beyond all hope insane. This is probably the single worst thing I could possibly do, for him and for me. I was going to regret this, and I knew it. I didn't know when or how much, only that I would.
Deal.
I said, gripping his hand tightly in a handshake. Chapter 10. Linus and I made our way back to town, garnering our share of ogling as we entered the gate. It was rare for a lone PanTech soldier to enter the town, especially walking side by side with a citizen, and the other villagers couldn't have made that any more obvious. No one dared to say anything aloud, but I guessed that most didn't approve of our being together. If I had to distill it down even further, it was probably my arrogance of walking next to him. I should be following, head bowed, eyes averted, in complete awe. My mother would have approved of that. At least, I think she would have. It was becoming harder and harder to tell anymore. Since everyone was afraid to talk to me with my new companion, it wasn't long before we made it to the chieftain's home. I knocked on the door and waited, and waited, and waited. Eventually, he came to the door, and one of the village girls, about my age, ran out as he opened it. She didn't look up at me, just hurried away like she was escaping a burning house. The chieftain looked at me, waggled his eyebrows, and laughed. Linus had stood off to the side, looking at some of the items stacked outside the chieftain's house to pass the time, so no one noticed him yet. I stared at him for a moment, my blood boiling, calling upon the divine power I needed not to put my hands around his throat.
Well,
I didn't answer. I couldn't yet. I was still cooling my rage. It didn't take long for him to become impatient, just watching me glare at him.
Listen here, you stupid girl. How about I knock out some of those pretty teeth of yours, huh? Will that give your tongue more room to talk, huh?
Linus had already started walking over. He stood in front of me and locked eyes with him.
Good afternoon, chieftain. I'm here to authorize the loan of your village's rifle to this girl. 100 rounds of ammunition.
Their eyes remained locked.
Hey, the rule states 10 rounds,
Linus grinned, shrugged his shoulders, raised his hands in mock defeat, then turned to look at me.
Sorry. Looks like your chieftain is going to try to override me on this one. Maybe he thinks I'm too stupid to count.
He turned to look back to the chieftain.
right? Am I too stupid to count?
The chieftain didn't answer, sweat beading on his bloated cheeks.
No? Too stupid to know the rules, then? That must be it. Too stupid to know the rules.
He turned back to me, smiling, before offering that smile back to the chieftain, then breaking out into laughter. The chieftain looked nervously between Linus and me several times before chuckling himself. Suddenly, Linus grabbed him by the collar of the shirt and flung him back into his house, sending him toppling over a table and knocking over 2 chairs that had been pushed beneath it. I was frightened for a moment. I hadn't seen that coming, and it was violence I hadn't yet seen from him. He'd been nothing but gentle and kind with me. For a moment, my stomach twisted at the memory of throwing the wine into his face earlier. I guess he did like me after all. Thank goodness. The chieftain struggled to his feet, his eyes wide.
My
He swallowed hard.
my apologies. I was only joking.
Linus kept his gaze cold and even, not even a hint of softness in his eyes.
When you come back around the corner, you better make sure that rifle isn't pointing my way, or I'll show you what a real joke looks like. Except I'll be the only one laughing. Now go.
The chieftain scrambled toward a different part of his home, tripping over one of the chairs he'd knocked over, before returning to his feet and running out of our sight. Linus looked down at me, smiled, and gave me a thumbs up.
How'd I do?
He whispered. My eyes were still wide, and I just slowly shook my head from side to side.
Oh no. Did I overdo it? I overdid it, didn't I? Wow. PanTech really is nicer to you guys than they are to other places. This is how they all acted in my zone.
All I could manage was a weak,
I'm sorry.
He tilted his head, hoping for more of an explanation.
I'm sorry.
I continued.
You shouldn't be, though. He's not a good man. He deserved that, and worse.
This seemed to relieve him a bit, but the implication that it was all an act wasn't something I bought. It didn't look rehearsed. It looked practiced. Linus hadn't been exaggerating when he talked about his past. Still, you didn't get far in this world by being soft. I wished that weren't the truth, but it was. And I knew that. I didn't need the help of a poet or musician. I didn't want any help at all, but if it was going to be forced on me, an experienced gunslinger with a mean streak certainly wasn't the worst thing that could be thrown my way. A hypnotically handsome gunslinger with a mean streak, wavy blonde hair, deep blue eyes, and seemed to like me was even better for some reason. The chieftain came back around the corner, sweat now dripping freely from his chin onto his soaked shirt. He was carrying what I assumed was the rifle, wrapped in cloth, tied tightly with a string in several places, and a lidded metal bucket. He started to hand the rifle to Linus, but Linus instead nodded to me, who he passed it to instead.
I'm not going to find any problems with this rifle, am I? It's your duty to maintain it as we taught you.
No, of course not. It's well maintained. This, I promise you.
Will I find myself short on ammunition?
He shook his head.
No, 100 rounds, as you requested.
Thank you. Oh, and just one more thing.
Linus smiled and took a step toward the chieftain, who recoiled reflexively.
Yes?
That girl who left here when we arrived. Did you think I didn't notice?
What?
Linus punched the wall next to the door, bearing his fist into it, sending the chieftain cowering with his hands held above his head, as if his entire house was about to collapse on him.
You going to imply I'm stupid again? We speak the same language. If you say what one more time, I'll break your fingers.
Linus!
I grabbed his arm, but he pushed me back, sending me stumbling backward and falling onto the ground. Several villagers had gathered around now, mumbling amongst themselves, no one daring to speak loud enough for Linus or the chieftain to hear them.
I've no doubt you noticed. She's nobody. What do you care about her?
Linus reached over, grabbed his hand, and with a sickening crack, broke his finger. I put both of my hands over my mouth and gasped. What had I done by agreeing to bring him here? What if he treated everyone this way and was only kind to me because we were still within sight of his colleagues? What if he hurt more people?
I heard a what?
Linus still held his hand, the chieftain on his knees now, gasping in pain.
I saw her face when she ran out. If you bring any of the village girls in here again, I'm going to be back. And next time, I'll make sure there are no ladies present to remind me of my manners. Do you understand?
The chieftain looked at him, his cheeks vibrating as he shook, but turned his head away. Linus moved to the next finger, slowly bending it back.
Yes.
The chieftain shrieked.
I'm sorry, I'll never do it again, please.
He looked out to everyone in the crowd.
I promise. I won't lay a hand on anyone ever again, I swear.
Linus smiled and let go of his hand.
That wasn't so hard, was it? Now we can all go back to being friends again.
He pulled the chieftain to his feet and dusted him off, then turned to me. I stood quickly.
Shall we?
He reached for my arm, but I jumped back, unable to look at him. I tightly hugged the rifle, turned, and began walking away. He followed behind me, but didn't say anything for several minutes as we made our way back through the village. When we were finally alone, I stopped and turned to face him.
Why did you do that?
I asked, my hands still trembling. He noticed, and his smile faded.
I've met men like that before. Quite a few where I'm from. I'm sorry you had to see that, but men like that only speak one language, and that's a threat of violence bigger than their own. Do you understand?
I did understand. I wanted to do something like that myself almost every time I met the man. Every time his hand brushed against my arm, or his gaze lingered on me for too long, and I felt sick to my stomach. I always had my knife with me if I needed it, and I would have taken great pleasure in burying it into his neck. So, why was I such a hypocrite with Linus? Why did I recoil from his touch, like he was just as awful as the chieftain? I knew why.
I'm sorry, I just didn't expect that from you. I thought you were so gentle that I wouldn't see you hurt someone like that. It scared me.
Gentle and wouldn't hurt anyone, eh? I wish it were so. Maybe in another life, Taylor, but that's not the world you and I live in. The fact that I'm standing here before you now is all the proof you need that I'm not always a gentleman, that I'm a very different man when I need to be.
I felt like a fool. He was right, of course. It felt so obvious when he said it aloud. Had I used him to get the rifle? Had I cared about what might happen to him if he was caught helping me? Wasn't I ready to break his heart? And worse, if it meant rescuing the village from the snake? Could I do it still?
I'm sorry.
I ran over and hugged him around the neck with one arm, cradling the rifle in the other. I held on for a moment longer than I meant to before jerking away my arm and stepping back.
Thank you for standing up for that girl. And me.
His smile returned to his face.
Don't be so quick to thank me yet. I'm legendary for turning everything I touch into a mess.
He looked up to the sky.
Well, that took longer than expected. Mind offering me a place to stay tonight?
His face reddened.
I don't mean, what I'm saying is any place. Not with you. I didn't mean you, necessarily.
I'm sure my parents won't mind if you share a room with my brother, assuming you can handle him talking your ear off.
He rubbed his face, regaining his composure.
Do you think your mother could treat me to some of her lovely cooking and more of that cactus wine?
I'll put in a good word for you, just don't mention the snake, all right?
Didn't plan on it. No need.
He pointed to the rifle cradled in my arm and held up the canister of ammunition in his other hand.
The beast's as good as dead already.
Chapter 11. Despite Mother's incessant worship of PanTech, she seemed genuinely surprised, almost uncomfortable, to see Linus walk through the door behind me. For once, Father actually looked up from his papers, holding his pipe in his right hand, raising one brow, but saying nothing. After a moment of uncomfortable silence and a gentle nudge from Linus, I cleared my throat.
Everyone, this is Linus, the man I told you I was going to see today. He'll be joining us for dinner and sharing a room with Ferris tonight if that's all right.
Mother smiled.
Of course. I'm just starting on dinner, so it's no trouble to make extra. We're so honored to have you join us, Linus.
Ma'am.
Linus said, nodding. Father turned his pipe around, and pointed the stem in the direction of the rifle I was still cradling in my arms. I met his eyes, and I think he already knew what I was holding.
This?
I asked rhetorically.
Linus was quite a hunter in his zone and asked if I'd join him for some hunting tomorrow. Never hurts to have more meat, right?
Linus never wavered in his smile, and just nodded along.
Well, you're probably going to be disappointed, young man. PanTech thinned our deer population several years ago. It was too plentiful a source of food to satisfy them that our children were sufficiently underfed. Adversity creates character, and PanTech does love its half-starved children.
An uncomfortable silence filled the room once again, for even longer this time. Mother shot Father a look that would have knocked him out if it were a punch, or at least sent him flying from his chair. Linus scratched the back of his head.
Yeah, we went through the same thing when I was young. I'll not apologize for PanTech, but for what it's worth, I'm sorry myself.
Mother nearly tripped over herself, running over and grabbing his hand.
Oh no. Please forgive my husband. His tongue is so sharp it cuts right out of his mouth sometimes when his lips can't hold it back.
Linus only laughed.
I have the opposite problem. I can't find the right words at the right time. It made me rely on my hands a time or two too many. Anyway, the man speaks the honest truth. I'm taking my personal time right now, so I'm not representing PanTech. Just myself.
He pointed to Father's pipe.
And, is that an honest-to-goodness smoking pipe in your hand? I haven't seen one of those in years.
Father's glare at Linus only hardened, but then he looked at me, and something in his eyes softened instantly, and he actually smiled.
I bet you haven't tried anything like this before. I have a second pipe if you'd care to join me while my wife makes dinner. My daughter never cared for it, so it'll be nice to have someone to smoke with.
I shook my finger at him.
That's because Mother wouldn't ever let me try it. I think it smells wonderful.
Mother let go of Linus and shook her own finger at me.
Ladies don't partake in such hobbies, Taylor.
I started to argue with her, but Linus's laughing drowned me out.
Yes, ma'am.
He finally said. I elbowed him in the ribs, but quickly pulled my arm back, rubbing it. Should have remembered the armor. This only set Linus to laughing again, and he had to brace himself against the wall. It seemed even he had his limit to laughs and smiles, but when our eyes met, what I saw looked more like pain than happiness. Father chuckled and stood to his feet.
What can I do, Tay, being so outnumbered?
He shrugged and disappeared around the corner, presumably to retrieve the pipe and smokeweed jars. My brother appeared around the corner, using the wall for support, his face covered in sweat. Mother rushed over to him, helping to hold him up.
You shouldn't be up,
She said.
The doctor said you needed at least a few more days of bed rest. Go on back to your room, and I'll bring you your dinner soon.
Come on, Mother. You'll embarrass me in front of our guest here. You honestly expect me to sit in there when you guys are having all the fun out here? I can be in pain out here just as easily as I can in there, but with more conversation. The doctor's just being overly cautious. Just help me to my chair if you don't mind.
She started to protest, but realized how pointless that would be and helped him into his chair as he'd asked. He took a deep breath and let it out in a slow and exaggerated exhale.
Linus, was it? I'm Taylor's brother, Ferris. It's a good thing you picked Taylor. Otherwise, we'd be rivals for all the other pretty girls in the village, and I don't like your chances.
I felt my cheeks burning. I should have expected this from Ferris. Of course, he wouldn't let a little pain get in the way of embarrassing me.
Ferris!
Linus broke out into laughter again before he'd fully recovered and had to stumble over and sit in one of the chairs at the table.
Since I did you such a big favor, maybe you could do one for me and put in a good word with your sister for me?
Ferris grinned.
Not a chance.
Father returned with the extra pipe, already filled with smokeweed, handing it to Linus.
Use the candle to light it. Just make a circle and puff it slowly. Careful, it may catch you off guard at first.
Linus eyed him incredulously and took 2 deep puffs as he moved the candle, but dropped the candle before simultaneously picking it back up and nearly choking to death. He coughed and wheezed for several seconds, while Father just grinned, and Mother looked absolutely petrified in horror. At last, he caught his breath.
Wow,
He shouted.
this isn't tobacco.
Tobacco.
Father asked.
I wouldn't know. Is that what it was called in your zone?
That's what we smoked, but definitely not the same stuff.
Linus said, still fighting off the remaining small coughs. He tried again, but much more slowly this time, finally getting a good light on his pipe. He puffed it cautiously, nodding to my father.
Some of the boys back home would get a real kick out of this stuff. They thought ours was strong.
Father only smiled and nodded, puffing his own, leaning back in his chair.
What was it like in your zone? We seldom hear about the others.
Almost never? Try just never. Perhaps Father didn't want to deter him by saying we'd never heard anything beyond rumors of the other zones or overheard short conversations between soldiers. Linus looked up at the ceiling, like he was trying to recall something that happened 100 years ago.
Well, I guess not too much different from this place, really. They tell us not to talk about it because it's a life we're supposed to leave behind completely. For most of PanTech's employees, this isn't too hard. Who would miss an adversity zone when you never have to worry about adversity again? Food of every kind you can imagine, medicine like you wouldn't believe, technology.
He trailed off, stopped, then took a puff of his pipe.
Sorry, that's not what you asked.
Linus paused again, taking a deep breath.
I lived in the desert too. Technology, I think, was probably on a similar level to your zone. We had horses. Big animals we rode on, like your camels. But shorter hair, and a lot more of them. Just about all of us had guns, like the one Taylor brought in. We even had smaller ones you could hold in one hand, with a revolving cylinder that held the rounds. That was my gun of choice. Something like the sidearm I'm carrying now, but not nearly as advanced.
He patted the holster on his side that held the smaller gun soldiers always carried. Ferris had been sitting quietly, for once, listening with his full attention.
You think all of the adversity zones are like ours? Do you know how many there are?
Linus shook his head.
No idea how many there are, but there are quite a few. PanTech has the resources to manage a lot of them if they wanted to. One soldier told me that his zone was a city, where they spoke through something attached to a wire, and another person could hear them a long way away. They could have a box sitting on a table, and singing voices would come out, or PanTech would sometimes make announcements through them. I've seen things a lot more advanced since PanTech employed me, but I haven't been to any of their military facility much over the past year. Of course, the stuff I'm wearing is the most advanced thing I've seen yet, but I'm told that doesn't hold a candle to the things they have at the universities.
He shot me a glance before lowering his head, slipping back into deep thought again. Is that where the snake came from? One of PanTech's advanced universities, made in some lab with advanced technology and used to prey upon an adversity zone. I couldn't even begin to imagine all the good that could be accomplished from such a place. My father only had supplies and our lesser technology, and he'd invented things to improve our lives here before they stopped him. What's the point of having all of this technology and food if all you're going to use it for is to make everyone's life worse? None of this new information really changed anything. It just reinforced what we'd already suspected. PanTech is as sinister as they come.
That sounds wonderful.
Mother said, looking between Ferris and me.
Don't you want to pass your exam and be placed at one of them? You could study animal medicine, Taylor. Imagine all of the things you could do for humanity.
Sure,
I said.
I bet I could come up with new ways to starve people. I could take an animal that they depend on to eat and make its flesh poisonous. Or maybe I could take a small animal they keep for pets and mess with their head so they sneak into homes and kill babies. Imagine the endless possibility.
Your disrespect really has no limit.
What's that smell?
Linus interrupted.
Smells even better than the bread I had earlier.
Oh, that's because it's much better fresh,
she said.
It's actually the same bread. I'll bet it's done.
She turned around, opened the door of the oven, and pulled out the pan. She sat it carefully onto the counter and sliced off equal portions for all of us, placing them on plates and setting them in front of us. Ferris knocked a knuckle against Linus's armor.
You want to change out of that stuff? You could borrow some of my clothes. Can't be comfortable.
He grinned.
Quite the opposite. The whole thing's designed for comfort and cleans itself on the inside. It has to be drained and refilled about once a week, but it keeps us cool out here. All that, and it could still take a direct hit from your village's rifle, no problem.
Ferris just scrunched up his chin and nodded several times before taking a bite of his bread. It was nothing special to us, but clearly Linus enjoyed it since he very reluctantly asked for seconds. Once we'd all finished and spent a bit more time talking, we all retired to our rooms for the night. I could hear Ferris and Linus talking on and off into the deep hours of the night. Tomorrow, we'd begin our hunt. Chapter 12. Linus and I were up early the next morning, before anyone else. I guess neither of us got much sleep. When I stepped into the common area, he was sitting at the table alone, his mind off in another place. Something about him looked sad and distant. He was so absorbed in whatever he was thinking about that he didn't even notice me until I pulled the chair to sit down at the table, and he jumped a bit.
Well, good morning, Sunshine.
He said in a low voice.
You're the one with the golden hair? Shouldn't you be Sunshine?
I retorted. He tapped his chin, mulling this over.
I see your point, but I don't think it suits me. Kind of a feminine nickname. Some of the boys I rode with used to call each other that, to try to goad a reaction.
Well, you have golden hair, blue eyes, and you're always smiling and laughing, so I think it's a fitting description.
He smiled, almost on cue.
Okay, you got me. But I'd still prefer it if you didn't call me that.
I held up my hands in surrender.
If you insist.
He continued smiling and just stared at me for a moment. I waited because it looked as though he wanted to say something.
I think those clothes suit you. Do you mind if I say that?
If he hadn't asked if it was okay for him to say it, and after he'd already said it, I might have blushed. Instead, I laughed and pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from waking everyone else.
No, you can't say it. How will you take it back?
His smile faded, and he frowned slightly.
Oh,
He looked away.
sorry, you're just so beautiful. And I just said it without thinking and, oh, man, I just did it again. Sorry.
This time, I did blush. Hard.
Oh, I was only kidding. I don't mind if you say it.
He scratched his head and stood up.
Well, are you ready to...
I think you are too.
I blurted. I was so focused on finishing the sentence that I talked right over him. I expected him to get all flustered again, but he didn't. Instead, for just a moment, he looked as sad and distant as he did when I'd first stepped over to the table, as though he was remembering the death of a friend. Perhaps he was.
And, yes, I'm ready.
He pushed in his chair and signaled for me to walk over to the door, which he opened and held for me. I stared at him blankly for a moment.
Oh,
He started.
this is a custom where I'm from. A man often holds the door for women. It's a show of respect.
Oh,
I said, raising a brow.
sounds kind of strange. Can the women not open doors where you're from because of some kind of rule?
He laughed.
No, Taylor. You know what
He said, stepping back from the door and letting it close.
I think you can handle this door.
I grinned, but immediately wished I'd just humored him and walked out the door. Now he looked embarrassed again. I liked this Linus more than the one who felt like he had to hurt people, and I think he liked this part of himself too. The one that smiled and got rosy cheeks when he complimented me and got flustered when he tripped up on his words. And, in that moment, I hated the world that forced a man like him into a life of violence. PanTech's world. I picked up my pack and struggled for a moment to fit it on my back, then slung the rifle over my shoulder. It took some trial and error, but I finally remembered how to load the magazine last night, so all I had to do was chamber the round with the bolt, and I'd be ready to go. I pointed to the goggles on my head and the mask hanging around my neck.
Does your helmet protect you from the sand if the wind picks up today?
He nodded.
Sure does. Don't worry about me. I'll keep it strapped on my waist until I need it, though. I hate that thing.
I smiled and pushed open the door, but was startled by two PanTech soldiers standing just a few feet outside of it. I stumbled back and was caught by Linus, who didn't seem surprised at all. The soldier on the left was taller and bigger than Linus and looked several years his senior. His skin was reddish-brown, and his hair was dark and long, resting even with his shoulders. The soldier on the right was pale, with red hair. I recognized him as the jerk who bullied the elderly woman before the commander gave her speech. I'd give anything to dump a bucket of angry terror ants on his head. He was the first to speak.
You didn't return to the camp last night, Linus.
He said. I stepped to the side so that I wouldn't be between them, and so I could watch all of them. Linus grinned.
I think you're right. As usual, you're a master of the obvious. Pretty sure I didn't have to.
I'm pretty sure the rules state...
Oh, go choke on the rules, Peter. But I doubt it'll make the commander like you any better.
Peter reached for his sidearm, but the bigger man put his hand on his arm, stopping him.
Better thank Oscar here for stopping you. I'd have blown you away before you got it out of the holster.
Linus said, grinning, resting his own hand on his sidearm, tapping his finger on it a few times, but not taking his eyes off Peter. Oscar took a step forward and put himself between the two of them.
Cut it out, Linus. You know we're just doing our job. The commander sent us to check up on you is all, and that's all we're doing. You know she has a short fuse, though, so please stop pushing everyone. Every commanding officer has had enhancements performed, and you know that, so if you pull the same thing with her again, like you enjoy doing with everyone else, she could shoot you 5 times before you drew your gun, even if you were the fastest human ever to live. Take it from someone with a few years of experience on you. Let that rebellious spark of yours burn out while you still can.
Linus gritted his teeth. It was the first time he actually looked angry since I met him. Even when he was dealing with the chieftain, he was smiling. He wasn't now.
Noted, but I didn't ask to be a soldier.
Oscar sighed.
No, but you were allowed to be one. Don't forget that. You're on your last strike.
He nodded to Peter before Linus could answer, and the two of them walked out of the village. Linus still stood there, his jaw tight over clenched teeth.
Are you okay? And what did they mean by you being on your last strike?
I asked, hugging his arm.
Are you going to get in trouble just for being here overnight?
He finally managed to force a smile back onto his face.
You don't need to concern yourself with that, so please don't ask about it again. That's some personal business of mine I'd rather not get into. And no, I'm not going to get in trouble just for being here overnight. That rule is in place because usually a soldier doesn't have as much downtime saved up as I do. It's never enforced. Peter just used it to take a jab at me. Don't worry.
He took a deep breath and sighed.
Ready to hunt?
I let go of his arm, not really buying his explanation, but thinking it'd be better not to push the conversation further.
I'm ready.
I wondered if they'd go back and tell their commander about the rifle I had. Everyone employed by PanTech, even the soldiers, was much more intelligent than the average person. They all had to pass the exam to be selected. Would they put everything together and realize I was hunting the snake and that Linus was helping me? Surely he was forbidden from something like that, wasn't he?
Good, I need to take out some frustration on something. May as well be a giant snake with super armored scales.
My eyes went wide.
Super arm.
I shook my head.
Did you just say it had super armored scales?
I asked, unable to override my urge to shout. He put his finger over his lips to shush me and looked around, making sure no one had heard me. Thankfully, we were alone.
Yeah, I might have failed to mention that part, huh? Relax. I'm pretty sure that rifle will still penetrate it, but a sword or spear probably won't.
I furrowed my brow, glaring at him.
Any other superpowers you'd like to tell me about before we're standing out there trying to kill the thing?
Well,
He started.
I don't actually know. I only overheard the scales part. I'm not even sure that's accurate, but it didn't sound like a joke when I heard it.
He smiled again, reaching down to tap his sidearm.
Even if your rifle doesn't do it, my blaster will take care of it. But if the blaster fails, My rifle could take down any living thing anywhere on Earth. But you can also hear the thing being fired almost anywhere on Earth. And even though my helmet protects my hearing, you may go deaf if I shoot the thing while you're standing next to me.
And they'll come to see why you fired. I finished for him inside my head.
Fine. I trust you. Let's get out of the village before we talk about it anymore.
I should have known I'd lose my nerve. Not about the snake. I was ready for anything with the snake, but not with Linus. Before, I was prepared to sacrifice him to take care of the snake and save the village. Why did it suddenly weigh so heavily on me that he might get in serious trouble? Didn't I know from the beginning that he would? Hadn't I expected it? We had only made it about 100 yards out of the village and were still within sight when I took a deep breath and let it out.
Stop,
I said firmly. He wheeled around, looking in both of our side directions rapidly.
What? Did you see something?
He asked, putting his hand on his blaster's grip.
No. Sorry.
I trailed off.
You don't have to do this, you know.
He narrowed his eyes at me.
Yeah, I know, and?
Well, it's just...
I looked down, trying to hide the tears starting to well in my eyes. Really? Now you're going to get all emotional, Taylor? Face it. You're falling hard for this guy. Give me a break.
Those soldiers sounded serious. What if they figure out that you're out here hunting that snake with me? You're going to get in trouble. Just go back to your camp. You said yourself that this rifle should do the job.
Yeah, I said it should do the job. Also, this is my door, Taylor.
I tilted my head at him.
Your door?
He nodded.
You know how you said earlier that holding open the door for women didn't make sense because they can open doors too? Well, I'm perfectly capable of deciding whether or not I want to go on this hunt with you. I know the risks far better than you do, so just banish those thoughts from your mind. They're silly, and you'll just blame yourself if something happens. I'm out here hunting it with you because it's something I want to do. I'll decide what's good for me, and PanTech can go shove it where the sun don't shine if they've got a problem with that. Got it?
I furrowed my brow, hating to ruin the serious moment, but he'd lost me.
Shove what? Where the sun doesn't shine? You mean like in the shade?
He exploded into laughter, and laughed so hard that he collapsed onto his hands and knees. Finally, he looked up at me. His lips pressed into a forced smile in order to hold back the laughter still trying to escape. He struggled to his feet, dusting the sand off his armor.
I'm not about to explain that one to you. Now, come on. We've got a giant armored snake to kill.
Chapter 13. We'd continued walking for a while until we were out of sight of the village and in the opposite direction of the PanTech camp.
It's entirely possible this thing has moved on. Do you think we could be that lucky?
I asked.
It hasn't moved on.
He replied, a little too quickly. I stopped looking at him.
How are you so certain of that?
I helped bring it here, remember? We were all briefed on what to expect and how to guide the thing in a way.
He continued walking, and I had no choice but to continue walking with him.
What do you mean by guide it?
He looked up at the sun briefly before rubbing sweat from his forehead.
It's hot enough to melt steel out here.
Linus?
Yeah?
He said, finally stopping to look at me.
What do you mean by controlling it?
I didn't say control. I said guide.
He grinned. I punched him in the arm. Ouch.
Come on, you're going this far. Why keep anything from me at this point?
He sighed, pointing at a rock where we could catch a bit of shade. We walked over to it, and he sat down, patting the sand beside him. I sat next to him.
It's not that, well, not that I'm keeping things from you exactly. I'm just a little embarrassed is all.
I chuckled, shaking my head.
I can't tell from 1 minute to the next what's going to embarrass you, make you angry, or make you laugh.
He smiled, running his fingers through his now sweaty hair.
Am I really that unpredictable?
Not really.
I conceded.
I just need to get to know you better, or maybe I'm just making an excuse to get to know you better.
He put his arm around my shoulders and pulled me closer to him.
I'll take it then.
We sat silently for a few minutes, less awkwardly than I'd expected.
So, guide how?
He sighed, hanging his head.
PanTech set it up so that it can't escape. It has implants, one of which won't let it outside of a certain radius, within a sort of triangle-shaped area of the camp, where the camp is the point of that triangle.
So that's why they're set up at the edge of the boundary.
I added. He nodded.
Yep, you got it. And as you probably already guessed, that range extends to just about the edge of the opposite boundary.
Has it been trained to hunt humans?
I asked, bracing myself against the answer.
Yeah,
He said, still not looking up.
How did they accomplish that?
don't know, but I'm afraid to let my imagination fill in the blanks. Would caution you against the same thing.
He said.
Are they that cruel or that advanced?
He raised his head and tapped his chin, genuinely considering this for a moment.
I'd say advanced. Based on my experience, they really do think they're doing the right thing and what's best for everyone.
What about you?
I asked.
You're kidding.
He frowned, looking genuinely wounded by the question.
Sorry, dumb question considering you're out here.
I conceded. He shook his head.
I guess I couldn't disagree completely that having a harder life makes us better people. But I think I'd rather be free and happy than better, whatever that means. There was my dad, then my mom, and then a brief period of time where I wanted freedom so bad that I chose the freedom to do bad things. It's a little sad, I think, that I look back on those memories as my best. I thought with PanTech it would be different. I gave in and took their test, scored well, got accepted to an engineering school. Still, almost immediately, they considered me problematic. I argued with everything, snooped around in places I wasn't supposed to, and got on the bad side of every instructor I had. Ended up being sent off to the military division to learn discipline, but I didn't do a lot better there. Got into a fight my first day I was over there and got assigned to what they call low-tech zones. No offense, but that's where they send their bottom-of-the-barrel people. Expectations are low, and this group is reduced to bullying people with sticks and rocks, maybe the occasional sword. Not that it makes any difference. Wrong is wrong, no matter how hard it is to bully a zone successfully.
I kept quiet, just nodding as he ranted, not expecting the sudden openness.
I'm no fan of PanTech, but my brother always felt like we could help change it from the inside if we passed our exam.
He shrugged.
Maybe, but that's not for me. I don't have that kind of patience or care for the world.
Now I regretted asking him about this in the first place. This conversation obviously wasn't good for his state of mind.
So, about the super-armored snake.
He perked up.
Yeah? What are you thinking?
I scratched my neck and looked around.
I was actually wanting to ask what you were thinking. I have no idea how to bait one this huge without leading out big game. We can't afford to sacrifice any more livestock or camels. Also, since it travels underground, it could be anywhere within that triangle you mentioned.
He grinned.
Why, Taylor, I'm disappointed in you. You dragged me all the way out here without a plan?
I lightly punched him in the arm.
You dragged yourself out here, remember? You keep saying so.
His grin stretched even wider.
Well, I hope this doesn't surprise you, but I actually do have a plan.
As much as I wanted to tease him, I wasn't surprised at all.
Care to enlighten me?
I asked.
PanTech needs to have a way to direct this creature where they want it, besides holding it within the radius I already mentioned. If they want to guide it to a specific spot in the village, say a secret meeting house for rebels, they wanted a way to summon it there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be much of a weapon.
Let me guess.
I said.
Special bait that brings the beast in quickly. I'm guessing something to make it extra hungry and extra violent.
He nodded several times.
Wow, Taylor. I knew you'd guess the first part, but not the second.
Wait, I was right?
I glared at him.
It makes it extra hungry and violent, and we actually want to use that to bring the snake here? Isn't it going to be hard enough to kill already without it going berserk? I was hoping we could sneak up on it and kill it while it was eating, the way you can with the small ones.
Look,
He said before sighing.
I get where you're coming from, but otherwise, we'll have to wander around aimlessly and wait for the thing to strike again. It won't be a pig next time, Taylor. It'll be a villager. It could be your parents, it could be your friend, it could be a child. If that's not bad enough, I'll run out of my personal time soon. I'm afraid if we don't do this now, you'll have to fight it alone. I do not want to risk that. I'd rather die killing it than to let you do this on your own.
My eyes went wide, and I felt myself blushing again.
I'm not gonna let it kill you either, Mr. Hero. This rifle isn't for show.
He nodded.
Yeah, it's not. All right, partner. Are you ready to get this party started?
Ready as I'll ever be.
I said. He pulled a small box from his pack and stood to his feet. He started to open it, but just rested his hand on top, looking back at me.
I suspect Peter and Oscar, the two soldiers who paid me a visit this morning, realized one of these was missing and was hoping to catch me with it. That's why I went out of my way to make sure Peter lost his cool, and Oscar would have to back him off. They're not going to give up easily, but by the time they realize I really do have it, it'll be too late. Just avoid them or play as stupid as possible, no matter what. Don't be fooled into cooperating with them, no matter what. Especially Oscar. He always seems to know the right thing to say to pull confessions out of people. Don't trust Oscar, no matter what he says. No matter what he offers you.
I nodded.
All right, I'll remember that.
Promise me.
He said, his voice becoming harder than before.
Okay, I promise.
I said reluctantly. I wanted to ask him why I had to promise, but I knew I wouldn't get anything more out of him right now.
I'm ready when you are.
He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, looking up to the sky. Then he smiled, opened the box, and reached inside. What he pulled out wasn't anything spectacular. I'm not sure what I was expecting. Maybe a machine that produces sound, or an insect with a pheromone that the snake was attracted to. This was nothing but a small pellet, and it looked like some of the compressed feed we used for some of our livestock. He placed it back into the box without closing the lid. He pulled out his canteen, opened the lid, and offered it to me.
Drink?
He asked. I took it from his hand and indulged in a small drink before handing it back to him.
Kinda small, isn't it?
He looked at me and grinned before turning his attention to the box and pellet.
I was hoping you'd say that.
He held his open canteen over the box and began tilting it before stopping and looking at me, his smile wide.
You might want to take a few steps back.
I did, and he began pouring water into the box, then tossed it quite a way away from us. It sizzled, then a foam shot out of it, covering the large area around it before soaking into the sand.
Now?
I asked.
Now, we wait. How long depends on how far it is away from us right now. But when it shows up, be prepared to give it all you have.
I unwrapped my rifle, pulled the bolt back toward me, and then pushed it forward again to ready a round into the chamber. I used my left hand to pull the goggles down over my eyes and stretched the scarf over my mouth.
Aren't you going to put your helmet on?
I asked.
Nope.
Nope. Nope. Why?
Because if I secure it on the suit, they'll be able to monitor what I say. No thanks. I'm used to the desert too, remember? I'll be fine. This foam will keep it from stirring up too much dust when it emerges.
I pulled down my scarf.
You're not big on giving information up front, are you?
You like me anyway, right?
He winked.
I think I do, unless there's something else you'd like to tell me that you've been holding back on.
Well, I wouldn't mind.
He began, then shook his head.
No, never mind.
He reached down and unholstered his sidearm, kneeling down and putting his hand on the sand. He stayed like this for several minutes, neither of us wanting to speak.
Maybe it didn't work?
I asked. He just kept staring down, his hand pressed firmly into the sand.
Yeah, maybe I was supposed to take it out of the box first. Or maybe I put too much...
His thoughts were interrupted by a slow rumble. At first, subtle enough that I wasn't sure if I'd felt it correctly. He bent down further, pressing his ear to the ground, holding up one finger.
False alarm?
I whispered. He waited a few more minutes before letting out a big sigh of relief.
Looks like it's gonna be a...
He was interrupted again, and this time there was no mistake. The ground quaked beneath us, and I stumbled to my knees, holding the rifle with my right hand and steadying myself with my left. Linus leapt to his feet, pressing in some kind of mechanism on his sidearm, and it let out a low hum.
It's about to emerge. Get ready.
He shouted, before I noticed the smile return to his face. He wasn't dreading this at all, or terrified like I was. He was looking forward to it. He was excited. With a muffled thud and a splattering of the foam covering the ground, the demon emerged into the open air. Chapter 14. Nothing I could have done, no thought that could have entered my mind, and no amount of preparation or training could have made me ready for this moment. Seeing this creature now, in its massive size and power, made me freeze in place. I could only stare, my mouth agape, my legs being sapped of their strength to hold me up. I wanted to run, to hide, or to lock myself away in the safety of my home.
Taylor!
Linus shouted. I barely heard him, and didn't register what he was saying. I could only watch the snake slowly move around us, 10 times the size I imagined it. How could PanTech do this to us? This would have killed everyone. It's going to kill us.
Taylor, listen to me.
Linus pleaded.
You've got to snap out of it. If you don't, you're dead. It had blood. It bleeds. And anything that bleeds dies. You're going to make it die, and I'm going to help you. Lift your rifle, aim, and fire before it makes it all the way out. I'll cover you while you reload.
I snapped my attention back to reality, but my hands shook like a sheet of paper in the wind. I gasped and pulled in the deepest breath I could, then let it out. I did it again and again until, at last, I could open and close my hands and ignore the tears streaming down my face. I raised my rifle and fired the first few shots. The first 2 missed, but the third hit. I could tell it hadn't penetrated deeply. It took me a moment to realize I still had 7 rounds in the magazine. It coiled close around me and fixated on my position. I shot the last 7 shots in rapid succession, only about half hitting.
It's going to kill me,
I screamed.
No, it won't.
Linus said, as calmly as he could.
I'll hit it as it strikes. It'll pull back. Reload. Now. This sidearm isn't rapid fire.
I dropped to my knees and pulled out a loaded magazine with 10 fresh rounds, dropped the other magazine before throwing it into my pack, and slammed the bolt forward. As I did, the snake struck toward me with blinding speed. Still true to his word, Linus fired his blaster and hit the side of its head, sending it recoiling back and facing its attention toward him now. Blood was oozing from the much larger wound on the side of its head. I could tell from looking at it that it wasn't even close to being dead. We'd made a huge mistake. We were going to die here, and it was all my fault. I raised my rifle, and more calmly this time, fired another 10 rounds into its neck, opposite the side Linus had shot. It turned its attention to me again. Now Linus looked panicked.
Come on! Come on, come on, come on!
The low hum came from his blaster. It needed time. I would have to load the rounds one at a time into an empty magazine now, and we were helpless in this moment.
Sling the rifle, grab some ammo, and reload as you run around it. We need to make it harder for it to zero in on one of us. I'll go the opposite way. Move.
His last command was jarring in its harshness, and I did as he instructed. I released the magazine and slung the rifle, grabbed a handful of the ammunition, and struggled over the snake's back to make my circle around. Linus did the same, but punched it as he did, making sure it paid the most attention to him. Just as he made it over the snake's back, it struck at him blindingly fast, and Linus dashed forward with equally impressive speed, narrowly escaping the strike. It was beyond human, and only the armor could have explained it. I pulled my attention away from him and frantically tried to load rounds into the magazine while running, which was harder than I would have ever expected it to be. I dropped the first several before I finally got the hang of it. I'd managed to load in 7. The rest were lost in the sand. I stopped, took a deep breath, and held the rifle up steady to my shoulder, pressing my cheek into it. I held my breath and fired all 7 shots. Slower this time. I took the time to aim more carefully, even as the snake snapped its head around and repositioned its body to face me fully. I was calmer, slower, more careful, more precise. All 7 shots hit the target, and all in the neck near the others. Linus punched it several times, trying to get its attention, but it didn't work this time. The snake shot toward me, and all I had time to do was hold up the rifle vertically so it couldn't close its powerful jaws and use its fangs to pull me into its stomach. I could feel the hot breath as it closed down on the rifle. It flung its head about frantically, trying to dislodge the rifle, knocking me through the air and landing hard on the ground, forcing all of the air to leave my lungs. My first gasp was filled with sand, which only made things worse. It was stirring up more and more sand now as it thrashed about. Finally, the rifle went sailing into a different direction. Fortunately, I saw where it landed, and pulled my scarf over my mouth and my goggles over my eyes. Linus would have a hard time now. It came back for another attempt, but this time Linus was there between us and fired the shot from his blaster at the last possible moment, doing the most possible damage. This time, a large chunk of its face was exposed, and one of its eyes was completely useless. This shot would have killed most mammals, but reptiles are more resilient creatures. They can take far more damage. It flung itself backward and slammed onto the ground several times, sending Linus to his hands and knees from the small quake it had created. We were especially vulnerable now. It took nearly a minute to charge that shot, and I didn't have any ammunition nor a rifle to load it in.
You have to get up. Get your rifle back and load another magazine. I have an idea, but you have to trust me. Go!
Linus shouted, before coughing on the sand that was coating his throat. His blaster hummed as it recharged again, a steady stream of smoke rising from it now. Was it overheating? I jumped to my feet and made a run for the rifle. Linus ran with me this time, instead of in the opposite direction. I didn't understand why until we made it to the rifle. I knew it was here, somewhere, but I couldn't see it anymore. The sand must have covered it. I dropped to my hands and knees and started digging for it.
I don't see it,
I screamed.
I can't find it. I can't see it,
I said, losing my nerve again, feeling myself crying.
Take a deep breath. It's there. Don't worry about anything except finding it,
he said, positioning himself between the snake and me. It raised its head again and steadied itself, then struck at Linus. He grabbed onto one of the fangs with his left arm and stomped his foot into the bottom of its mouth. At first, I thought he would have the strength to rip its jaw apart, but he couldn't spread it open that far. He tried twisting the fang, but it had little effect beyond making the snake sway a bit. It hissed loudly and strained to collapse its jaws onto Linus. The power armor wasn't enough to match the snake's strength, and he slowly began to bend with the snake's effort, the point of the opposite fang resting on his shoulder. Though he held firmly to his blaster with his right hand, refusing to abandon it. None of this helped me to calm myself, but after a moment of digging, I finally managed to find the gun beneath the sand. I picked it up and ran toward my bag where the ammunition was, released the magazine, and began reloading, despite my hands trembling even more than before. I looked over my shoulder to see Linus clenching his jaw and growling in pain. The snake's fang had cracked through the shoulder of his armor, and the clear fluid that filled it was pouring out, tinged with red blood. I slammed the bolt forward and ran back to him, stopping and firing 10 more shots into the snake's neck, hoping against all hope that it would be enough to kill it once and for all. It wasn't. Blood poured from its many wounds, but it didn't seem to weaken it in the slightest, only angering it more. It picked up Linus and began thrashing around again. His blaster should have been charged by now, but it wasn't. Something must be wrong with it. Smoke billowed from it now, as if it were about to explode, but Linus held a death grip on it nonetheless. The snake weakened enough that it wasn't able to keep him up in the air anymore. I tried to release the magazine, but it was stuck. I tried as hard as I could to yank it out, but it wouldn't budge. I threw down the rifle and pulled out my knife, running and leaping onto the snake's head, stabbing into the already wounded areas, knowing the knife couldn't penetrate the undamaged scales. It did well enough in sabotaging the existing wounds. It flung its head to the side, sending me flying through the air again. The hum coming from the blaster was high-pitched now, and it shook violently in his hand.
Get back, Taylor! Run!
He shouted while slamming the gun into his bent knee, activating the charging mechanism again. He'd done this 3 times now, without firing it. Was he overloading it? I scrambled to my feet, barely able to keep my balance, and began to scoot myself back through the sand, further away. Linus threw the gun into the snake's throat, freeing his right hand to grasp the other fang. He roared and forced its mouth open with all his strength, but it wasn't enough. He couldn't pull the fang the final few inches from his armor. Ignoring his pleas, I ran back to the snake again, jamming my knife deep into its eye. It opened its mouth reflexively, and Linus was finally able to free himself from the fang completely. He grabbed me in his arms and ran a few steps before falling, sending both of us collapsing to the ground. The snake raised its head again, readying for another strike. Linus rolled on top of me, shielding my body with his. As the snake twitched to move forward, I could hear an explosion, and a flash of light came from its mouth. Pieces of its flesh flew in all directions, as well as fragments of the blaster, like bullets thudding against the sand. The snake fell to the ground with a thud. Its body coiled tightly for a moment, then went limp. Linus pushed himself up off me and gave me a smile before rolling off to the side, onto his back.
Have fun?
He asked, holding his shoulder and grimacing. I raised my goggles and pulled down my mask, wiping my face.
I'm snotting everywhere, and my goggles are all fogged up from crying like a scared little girl. I thought I could be brave, but when it came right down to it, I was so scared I almost ran away.
He laughed, but abruptly stopped and winced.
I think I'd call that normal. Don't sweat it. Oh, and thanks for saving me back there. Good thing you didn't run, or I'd be dead meat.
Save you?
I said, more angry than surprised.
Linus, you are the worst liar of all the men I've ever met.
He managed something like a half grin while gritting his teeth.
Guess maybe I'm not your type after all, then.
I smiled and threw my arms around his neck, kissing him deeply. He relaxed at first, pushing his lips into mine. He made a few grunting noises while tapping my shoulder, before I realized my elbow was directly over his wound, pressing my full weight into it.
Oh, sorry,
I said, feeling as though my skin was going to melt off my face. I can't believe I did that, but wow, just wow.
Of all the things in the world a person should apologize for, that should go at the bottom of the list. Come on, let's get you back home.
Chapter 15. It was only about midday when we made it back to the village. At first, I thought we'd be able to make it back to my house before the gawkers gathered around. But I was wrong. Some were well-meaning, offering to help us. One man took Linus's other arm over his shoulder and helped me support him as we walked. Others, I think, were just enjoying the novelty of an injured PanTech soldier. But there was a little more than that. There were still others, unless I was mistaken, who almost looked excited by it. Not that I could blame them, with everything PanTech represented. I wished I had the time to stop and explain to each and every one of them how Linus was different, how he was heroic and wanted to help people and make their lives better, how he stood up for others and for himself, how he liked those who valued freedom, and how he'd risked harsh punishment and his own life just to experience what little of it he could. I wanted to tell them how I hated PanTech too, and how Linus was on our side. But I didn't know how much of that was true, and almost nothing is that black and white. Here he was, having joined them, wearing full PanTech battle armor, visiting adversity zones to make sure things were hard enough for us to become better than we'd be without them. Better than we'd be if we had enough to eat, enough medicine and safety. No, it would be wasted words, and I had a feeling Linus didn't particularly care. When we arrived at my house, I thanked the stranger for helping us, but thought it better to send him away. Once inside, I sat Linus down at the table in the common room. Only after he'd sat down did I realize how much he was bleeding. The wound must have been deeper than I'd thought, and that he'd let on.
Please tell me that snake wasn't venomous,
I said.
Not that I know of.
He tried to shrug, but could only manage it with one shoulder, immediately showing his regret for trying with a sharp wince.
We need to get that armor off, right?
I asked, completely unsure of what to do. I'd never seen damaged PanTech armor, much less a soldier not wearing it. All I'd seen was most of them without a helmet. But that was common. With all the liquid shooting out and an open wound, this was something completely different. He chuckled. What little he could manage.
I wish I'd paid more attention when they told us how to handle this. Give me a minute to think about it.
Just then, my mother walked in and screamed. Ferris came limping into the room as well and put his hands on my mother's shoulders.
What did you do, Taylor?
Mother shouted.
What's that supposed?
I started, but Linus cut me off.
I didn't listen to her and ended up falling onto a rock. A sharp rock that pierced my armor.
He tried, as poor a liar as he was. But no one questioned a PanTech soldier. Even though it was perhaps the least convincing lie of all time, and Linus probably knew it, my mother shut her mouth and didn't push the matter.
Get my sewing kit, Mother. It's in my room, near the closet. The thread is thick, but it'll have to do.
She shook her head.
No, I have one with a more suitable thread for a wound. I'll go and fetch it.
Ferris limped over to us, obviously still in pain himself.
There were 2 PanTech soldiers who came by earlier looking for you, Linus. They said they'd be back later.
Linus only smiled and nodded.
So, the armor?
I asked. I was sure those soldiers checking in on him again was an important detail, but probably less important than, say, staying alive.
Right. Well, it's not as simple as just removing it.
He stopped, scratching his chin.
It's attached. Pretty deeply and anchored in. The wires are thin, so they could either break when we pull them, or they could be stubborn. I'm getting lightheaded, so I think I've lost too much blood already. You're going to have to remove the torso, at least.
I just blinked at him. This was a lot to take in. I could tell by the look on Ferris's face that he was thinking along the same lines.
That does not sound very reassuring,
I said. He attempted another shrug with the same result.
Ouch. Anyway, sorry, what do you want me to do? Bleed out? There are covers that overlay with the armor. If you lift them far enough, you'll find brackets that you'll be able to pull up on the end where the lip faces up a bit. I don't know how else to describe it, Taylor, and I don't mean to be pushy, but you're probably going to want to do this sooner than later, or I'm going to be unconscious.
Ferris didn't hesitate, pulling up the flaps where the arms connected with the torso, fiddling a moment, and producing a loud snapping sound that shook the armor. I followed his lead with the opposite side, and after a moment, we'd removed the arms. Linus's arms were smaller than expected, probably because of the sheer bulk of the suit. They were lean and muscular, and extremely pale, contrasting from his tanned face. He must have been in this thing for a while. He did mention that they didn't really take it off, just changed out the fluid inside.
All right, good work. Now you'll have to go up along each side doing the same thing. When both sides are unbuckled, you'll have to do a line around my waist. Then, you'll both have to grab the bottom near the waist and the top near my neck to pull the pieces away from one another, I think.
He said. Mother came back into the room, but stood silently in the doorway, her face racked with worry. It took Ferris and me several minutes, but we managed to undo the buckles. We pulled the 2 pieces in opposite directions, but they didn't budge.
You have to lift up on the front armor. Slide up, then out,
Mother said.
I have the thread ready. I'll take care of his wound once the armor is off.
Ferris turned and looked at her for a moment, the confusion clear on his face, but she didn't offer anything to alleviate it.
Ferris,
I said, getting his attention back on the task at hand.
Ready?
He nodded, and we pulled the pieces apart. The remaining fluid in the armor's torso spilled onto the floor, but it was completely red this time, compared to the mostly clear fluid I'd seen spill out earlier. I dropped the armor's chest portion and moved to get a closer look at his wound. It wasn't wide, but it must have been deeper than we thought. It couldn't have gone as far as his lung, based on his breathing, but it could have been almost that far. Mother stepped forward and began unraveling thread, but I snatched it from her hand.
I'll do it,
I said, as firmly as I could.
He's not a camel, Taylor.
I trust Taylor with my life.
Linus interrupted.
And then some.
He scratched the back of his head.
But would you mind too terribly rustling me up some grub?
Some grub?
She asked, and this set him into a laughing fit, which continued for a minute, despite the obvious pain it caused him.
Food, ma'am. Sorry, anything is good, but some of that wine would really hit the spot.
She stepped around us and began preparing a meal for him, as he'd asked. I didn't waste any more time. The wound was still oozing blood, and his hunger was probably partly because of the blood he'd lost already. I sewed quickly and efficiently, but not gently. Linus barely batted an eye. I felt his muscle flinch under the needle a couple of times, but he never protested or made a sound. He'd experienced this before, maybe many times before. Realizing this made me sad. Was it pity? No, not pity. Not exactly. It was realizing that he'd been through so much more than he'd let on, and he didn't have anyone to share his pain with him. Maybe I really did have it easy. Linus wasn't much older than me, but, looking at all of the scars that covered his torso, he'd seen so much more hardship than I had. Yet, he'd managed to hold on to some part of his soul and found a way to be kind. He never complained or made light of my troubles. His hardships had made him strong, resourceful, appreciative, and sometimes kind. But they'd also robbed him of love and happiness. PanTech didn't understand that. He had deserved to be happy and to have food in his stomach and a warmth in his heart. He deserved to be loved, and I decided without a doubt that I wanted to give him my love in all the ways I could. Maybe he could retire to the village at the end of his service, or I could pass my exam and ask to be assigned to the same group as him. Or, realization slammed into me, like closing a romantic book midway through, that PanTech would never allow this to happen. But maybe, just maybe, I could continue to visit him while he was here. They visited at least once a month. If he saved up his personal time and used it to spend time with me, just like he did today, then maybe...
Taylor?
Linus asked, tilting his head and leaning down to look at my face.
You all right?
I nodded, leaning in to look at the wounds along his sides. Several small wounds went up along his ribs, matching on both sides, where the wires embedded in his flesh had pulled out.
I'm fine, but...
Mind if I borrow some of your clothes, Ferris? You're a little bigger than me, but baggy's good. Oh, and a poncho, like what you'd wear if you had to go out in the rain. And, a hat. May as well go all out. Widest brimmed hat you have.
Ferris nodded.
I usually just wear a wrap, but Father has some hats. I'm sure if he was willing to share a pipe, he won't mind if you borrow one of his hats.
Where is Father?
I asked, irritated with myself that I'd only just now realized he wasn't home.
He went out to deliver the lesson plans he'd been working on. Remember? He'll be going over them for a while. He won't be home for a few more hours at least.
Your rifle.
Linus said suddenly.
What?
I asked, staring at him.
Hand it to me. I'll need to fix the jam. We don't want to return a defective rifle, do we?
He smiled.
Sure, but that can wait.
I urged.
You can do it later, right?
Now.
He said, holding out his arm with his hand open. I handed him the rifle, and he pressed the magazine release, taking a couple of quick pulls before giving up. This wasn't good for his wound, at all.
Linus, you can do this later, please.
He ignored me and put the butt of the rifle stock down on the floor, pointing it up straight at the ceiling. He raised his leg and kicked the bolt. When it didn't move, he kicked it a second time, a little harder this time. A bullet ejected and flew across the room. He sat the rifle back in his lap, and this time the magazine fell out freely. He smiled and breathed a huge sigh of relief. Was he really that concerned with disappointing the chieftain? Or maybe he just didn't want to leave the village without a working rifle. Ferris returned with the clothes, and Linus dressed quickly. He put on the long coat over his shirt, despite the weather. Didn't he say the suit kept him cool? Surely he was burning up with all of this on. Usually, when it rained, the weather was cooler. He fit the wide-brimmed hat on his head. He took it off again and just stared at it for a moment, before smiling.
Not exactly what I'm used to wearing, but close enough.
He said, putting it back on his head and standing to his feet.
Hey, what are you doing?
I asked. Again, he ignored me. He placed the rifle inside his coat and leaned over, looking himself up and down before nodding.
Good enough.
Mother stepped over and sat a plate of meat and a cup of wine down in front of Linus, both of which he made short work of. Linus stepped toward me and put his arm around me, holding the rifle beneath his coat with his other arm. He kissed me while Mother and Ferris competed for whose jaw would hit the floor first. He took a step back and gripped my shoulder.
This is goodbye. Please don't say anything. Don't make this any harder for me than it has to be. I'm going to go meet the others before they have a chance to come here. Thank you, Taylor. When I finish whatever punishment they have for me, I'll come back to see you again.
I could tell. I could see in his eyes that he was lying to me. Of all the things for him to lie about, this is the one that I couldn't take. I couldn't just say nothing as he'd asked. As I opened my mouth to speak, a knock came at the door. If you're enjoying F. Lockhaven's audio content, please like and subscribe. It's the best way to help out the channel.